here it is, Nicotiana tabacum. Pretty little chap, isn't he? Oh, to most of us, well, we call it the tobacco plant. And it was a great favourite with Sir Walter Raleigh. He introduced it to Elizabethan England, and what he said was, you smoke the stuff and it'll make you feel great. But the king, James I, well, he was a wily old bird, you know, and he didn't like it at all. And this is what he said about the stuff.
It is a custom loathsome to the eye, hateful to the nose, harmful to the brain, and dangerous to the lungs.
Now, the stuff which is in cigarettes, which gives them their kick, is nicotine, a drug, a chemical which is really a poison, because in other forms it's used commercially as a weed killer. No, I won't put any near you, poor old thing. Now, of course, there's not much nicotine in one cigarette, but it really does get inside you. You see, it gets joined onto little tiny droplets of water about 1/1000 of a millimetre across, and they go straight down into your lungs, and your bronchi, and your bronchioles, and all the tubes down here, and of course then it gets into your blood, and believe it or not, the nicotine one, puffing it to your brain in 5 seconds, and it to your big toe in just 15 seconds. It really moves around the body, and it has a pretty fantastic effect. Depending on what sort of a person you are, it either rather excites you a bit, or it begins to calm you down. And that wonderful effect, well, you might call it wonderful, lasts for about, what, 30 minutes. And once it's worn off, well, along comes a craving. You want another cigarette. You want that feeling, the excitement of the calming down, again and again. You have become an addict. You're hooked on tobacco.
OK, it's a strong word, addiction, but think about it. Nearly 75% of all regular smokers are hooked before they get to 21. That means they need a fag to get them through the day. And if you need a fag that badly, the chances are you're going to be hooked for the rest of your life. And that can have some very nasty consequences. Don't believe me? Come and meet Mr. Oliver. He's just smoked his legs off. Edward Oliver has got something called Berger's disease, which only happens to smokers. So far, he's lost his legs, half his stomach, and the sight in one eye. He started smoking when he was young, and has never been able to give it up. Just now, he's having to learn how to wriggle into a pair of trousers. How was that?
Tough going, but it makes you sweat a bit, because trying to wriggle into the trousers at the same time as, you know, trying to get your backside into the trousers, things like that.
Why do you think you still keep smoking then?
Well, I don't know, I'm just addicted to fags, I suppose. Or cigarettes, as you call them. I always smoked, I always will do, I suppose.
So it's addiction?
Oh, yeah, definitely addiction to cigarettes.
Do you regret starting smoking?
Now I do. I didn't then, not when I was a youngster. I thought the same as all the other kids in the street. Now, you know, that's all in the past. I can't bring it back. But, yeah, I regret smoking, of course I do.
Edward Oliver knows that more cigarettes will probably mean the loss of his hands and his arms. Yet still he can't stop smoking. That's the real power of tobacco.
Now, when you light a cigarette and take a drag, you're breathing in about 2,000 different chemicals. Now, some of them in the right dose would kill you stone dead. And we've already talked about one of them, nicotine. But another important one is carbon monoxide. Never heard of it, you say? Well, you have. You know those terrible suicides where people lock themselves up in their car and then pipe in the exhaust gas? Well, the stuff that kills them is carbon monoxide. Now, of course, one cigarette doesn't contain enough carbon monoxide to gas you to death, but it gets down into your lungs and into your blood and affects the red blood corpuscles. Now, they're the little cells that whiz the oxygen all over your body and keep you alive. And one thing that needs a constant supply of oxygen is your heart, because it does an awful lot of work. In fact, mine's beating away in there quite hard. Now, anything which affects those red blood corpuscles can lead to heart disease, and that's real bad news, because heart disease is Britain's #1 killer. In fact, every 15 minutes, somewhere in Britain, someone is dying of heart disease because they've been a regular smoker.
But heart disease isn't the only risk that smokers run. Smoking can also damage the body's blood vessels. This man has smoked all his life. Now he desperately needs an operation on his aorta, one of the most important arteries of all. Smoking has clogged up his aorta with something called atheroma. That's Greek for porridge. And now the surgeons must clean it out.
Having put the clamps across the aorta, I'm now going to make a small incision here, and you'll see straight away how... Now that is porridge, that is atheroma, and one can see how appalling this is, and one can appreciate what a tremendous chance there is that this artery will rupture, and if it does rupture, the mortality is extremely high.
Patients like these are all too familiar for surgeons like Mike Perry. How does he feel about having to cope with the damage caused by smoking?
Well, I think my first reaction is sadness at not being able to appreciate the damage that one is causing to oneself by smoking. The second thing is, if you like, bitterness, because one can spend 2 or 3 hours putting in an arterial graft into someone in the hope that the circulation to the leg will improve. One sees them a fortnight or 3 weeks later, and one sees them with 2 or 3 packets of cigarettes that they've just purchased, and one knows that one's arterial graft that one has put in will be wrecked if they continue to smoke.
Now, you might think that all that's bad enough, but I'm afraid it's only part of the story, because as well as the nicotine and the carbon monoxide, cigarettes contain tar, horrible black gooey stuff that gets right down into the smallest, darkest recesses of your lungs and begins to affect the delicate tissues which usually allow your lungs to work properly. Now, in non-smokers, you see, the lungs have their own special way of keeping themselves clean. Delicate little hairs sweep all the debris and muck out in a stream of a substance called phlegm or mucus. In the smoker, the tar in the cigarette smoke mucks it all up. Too much mucus is produced, the little hairs can't work properly, infection sets in, and that trickle becomes a thick yellow tide, and the smoker ends up in danger of almost suffocating, drowning in his own gunk. It's a real yuck situation. Of course, the doctors have a nicer word for it: bronchitis.
This is Joe Davis. His smoking led to acute bronchitis. Now he's got something called emphysema, a disease of the lungs which can't be cured. For the rest of his life he must fight for breath, taking his time even to walk from room to room.
Well, I was between 14 and 15, and I just started because the other boys were smoking. One of the lads. So they smoked, so I thought I had to be with them. It more or less made me feel that I was one of the boys, and that was it. Actually, health-wise, I felt nothing. Just that I smoked. All the boys smoked, I smoked. And what the boys done, I could do.
After many years of regular smoking, Joe Davis had a heart attack and was forced to retire. Since then, his health has got worse and worse.
Sometimes I feel as though I'm suffocating. You want to tear your clothes off with your neck, keep your neck open, but it doesn't make any difference. So you say relax, but you just can't relax. You'll just start talking. It's frightening, really.
Now then, you probably think Joe Davis is pretty old, don't you? OK, why don't you come inside and meet his daughter and her husband and see what cigarette smoking's done for them? Do you regret smoking?
Yes, very much so.
Why?
Because I get so breathless. I'm finding it's restricting my life a lot now. I'm having to walk at a much more sedate pace. I can't run. I know, because I'm the only one in our office that smokes, that they would rather I didn't, because I, as they put it, pollute the office. I know my breath smells, I know my clothes smell. But health-wise, I wished I'd never started.
Well, smoking is a curse. I mean, say you've very seldom got money in your pocket, because you're always sort of trying to scrape that odd couple of pence to get a packet of cigarettes. Your clothes smell, and if you get amongst sort of non-smokers, they sort of start giving you funny looks, much as, do you mind sort of moving? And also, once smoking gets a hold of you, it is very, very hard to give it up. Very hard.
Now, Doreen and John have 6 children. They all smoke too. The youngest is Trish. She started smoking when she was just 10. She's 19 now. Do you know how many fags she smokes? Between 20 and 40 a day.
Why do you feel the need to smoke?
Just the fact that it helps you relax. Just the fact that I'm just sitting here and I've got a cigarette in my hand. It just sort of just helps you, just sort of basically just what it does to me, just basically helps me to relax. It has this sort of effect on my health. Sort of if I'm walking down the road, I do tend to get a bit sort of breathless, or if I have to walk or run to get on a bus, that's when I find that it sort of, you know, my breathing starts sort of, you know, my breathing sort of stops and starts, or just simply walking down the road.
Could you do without a cigarette?
No, not really.
It's the tar stuff in the cigarettes that's the real villain. It doesn't just affect your breathing, but those delicate tissues deep down that line the insides of your lungs. So under a continuous onslaught of all this gunk, they get confused. They even go bonkers, and some of them may start to divide completely out of control. Oh, it's a long process, and it may take 30 years or more, but it's there inside you, happening, glowing away. At first you don't feel anything at all, and then after a time you begin to get a pretty terrible racking cough. You might even start spitting blood, and then a terrible, terrible pain in your chest. The doctors have a word for this, and I reckon it's the nastiest word in any language. It's cancer.
This woman has cancer of the lung. She's married with 2 children, but it's already too late for an operation. She didn't start smoking until she was nearly 20, and she never smoked heavily. But now she's fighting for her life, and her only chance of survival lies in a course of very powerful drugs.
The treatment I'm now receiving involves some very strong side effects, nausea and vomiting, very early after treatment. I have lost all my hair. I have suffered considerably in not being able to eat because my stomach won't keep food down, and my gullet is extremely painful, which makes it very difficult to eat, even if I could hold the food down.
In my mind, there's no doubt at all that lung cancer is almost entirely due to cigarette smoking. I so rarely see a case of lung cancer in a non-smoker that if I do, I have to look for other very special reasons. 99% of patients with lung cancer are smokers.
My GP has said it's no use looking back and feeling guilty, but it doesn't stop you looking back and thinking that it wasn't a very sensible thing to have done. Although sensible is probably not the right word. It becomes a habit very easily. Once it's a habit, it's not very easy to give it up. The consequences, one doesn't give a lot of thought to at the time. In the light of what I'm suffering now, it's very difficult. It's happening. It could have been avoided. Possibly I'd realised a lot earlier than I did know.
Now then, that was pretty frightening, wasn't it? Pretty nasty. But how likely is it to happen to you if you're a regular smoker? Put it this way. Take 1,000 regular smokers and work out how they're going to meet the deaths. 1 in 1,000 will be murdered. 6 will die in road crashes. And 250 will be killed before their time by tobacco. That's 1 in 4, or 2 of these. Why do you smoke then?
Well, my friends, they smoke, and nearly all my friends in the school smoke, and then I feel the odd one out and they start picking on me. The one thing, I don't take it down. So I'm a weak because I don't take it down.
So what do you do then?
Well, just takes puff and eat. I try to take it down, but I can't.
How do you try to get it down then?
Well, just tries and goes like that and breathes out. Just makes me feel alright. When I'm nervous and I smoke one, I just feel alright after.
I think it's stupid. Very stupid. It turns you all black insides and kills you.
Is it hard for you to try and give it up, do you think?
Yes, it is hard to give it up. I don't know why, but people just get a habit in them, and then when it's easy to start it off, but when they try and finish smoking, it's too hard. So they just have to carry on.
So there you are, the wonderful pleasures of smoking, this wonderful tobacco stuff that makes you smell absolutely ghastly, cough like a camel, cost you a fortune and may well end up killing you. And yet, people still do it. Why? Well, the answer is addiction. And if you say it can't happen to you, well, grab this. Half the people who are actually cured by an operation for cancer caused by smoking, within a year they're back smoking again. It's that addictive. They've gone through the whole trauma of this terrible disease, a fantastically difficult operation, the post-operation, and then they're back. They're so hooked on tobacco. Why? Who is gaining anything out of this at all?
This lot does. This factory actually belongs to one of the companies that manufactures cigarettes. And do you know how much all the companies sell? Billions of pounds worth. Yes, billions. So you can see there's an awful lot of money at stake. But lately this lot have been having a hard time from doctors who think that it's wrong making profits from peddling things which may kill people. Not that the tobacco companies are too worried. You see, they've got friends in high places. This lot, the government. Every time you buy a packet of fags, most of the money goes to the government. In fact, in Britain, regular smokers pay the government £11.5 million each day in tax. That's you, your money, your dad's money, your family's money, straight to the government. Now, the crazy thing is, that explains why the government won't ban advertising, won't ban sponsorship or control smoking in public places, because they need the money. And the tobacco companies, of course, are trying to convince you that smoking's a smart thing to do. Not that everybody would agree.
If I was 16 again and knew what I know now, I wouldn't touch a cigarette. And I'd put anybody else off that was smoking them. I've tried that with my granddaughter. She just don't want to know.
I class myself as hooked on cigarettes. If that's the way that people like to, if that's the way that you should sort of term it, if that's the way you, then I suppose I am hooked on cigarettes.
That can't be good, can it?
No, but I enjoy doing it, so it doesn't really bother me.
Think we've been a bit over the top about this smoking business? Blooming killjoys? Well, listen to one last story. If someone wants to develop a new drug, then there's all sorts of rules and regulations. It's got to be tested again and again to make absolutely sure it's safe. A very, very sensible thing. Recently, a drug was developed that really did help people suffering from arthritis. And I tell you, I've got it in that wrist, and it's a very, very painful thing to have. But because just it was suspected of causing a handful of deaths, it was banned. No doctor was allowed to prescribe it, even though it was helping people in desperate pain. Very sensible. But this little plant, well, we grow it, millions of acres of it. We cut it, we dry it, we cure it, roll it up in little white cigarettes and smoke the stuff. And last year it killed 100,000 people, and that was in Britain alone. Worldwide it's millions. Now, I never like saying anything nasty about a plant, but I really wish this one had never been invented.
It could have been avoided. Possibly I'd realised a lot earlier than I did know. But even then, you don't think it will happen to you. I was not what they call a heavy smoker. Sometimes 10, maybe it was a bad day, 20 a day, but never any more than that. Yeah. Didn't really even enjoy it much towards the end.